Welcome to Jump in the River, where faith, hope, and real-life discipleship flow together.
Welcome back to the Jump in the River podcast. I am Daniel. This is my lovely wife, Amanda. And we got another one here brewing. So, well, first of all, let's go to how things are going. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right.
Yeah, I just jumped right into it. I was ready to go.
Did.
Yeah, there's been a lot happening, a lot of parts moving and stuff, and I actually took on a new job. So there's been a lot of, so it's been challenging, I guess, to try to make this this still happen, but we want to walk this thing out in obedience. And one of the things the Lord was leading me this week is, or this episode, I should say, is Luke 18, 10 through 14 was really kind of standing out to me. And we're going to see how this goes. We didn't really prepare necessarily. We just kind of are rolling with it. And the reason, there's part of it, I wanted it to be that way because I wanted to see, because I'm going to kind of approach it in maybe a little different angle than people have typically. So with that being said, I guess
What's it say?
let's jump right into Luke 18, and it's actually verses 10 through 14. So, just a little background is this is a parable that Jesus has given. I guess I don't need to go too far into the background, but and this is in red, just so everybody knows. It says, 2 men went up into the temple to pray, one a Pharisee, the other a tax collector. The Pharisee stood and began praying this in regard to himself. God, I thank you that I am not like other people, swindlers, crooked, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I pay tithes of all that I get. But the tax collector, standing some distance away, was even unwilling to raise his eyes toward heaven, but was beating his chest, saying, God, be merciful to me, the sinner. I tell you, this man went to his house justified rather than the other one. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, but the one who humbles himself will be exalted. So that's the parable. And there's, I guess, the approach that immediately stuck out to me was the Pharisee.
Yeah.
And I feel like the Pharisee is not always, but sometimes can represent the church in a way.
Okay.
Or church people.
Yeah.
To where it gets to be like almost like prideful Christianity. Mm-hmm. And I know we've kind of talked about this before. Maybe not in this deep a magnitude, but I think it's kind of normal in a way, that especially if you've been serving the Lord, you have been doing, a lot of different things. But in this case, the thing I want to point out is how unhealthy it is.
Yeah.
So like when we have new people come into the church, so to speak, like that could represent the tax collector, who says, I don't have this thing figured out. I don't, basically he's like, yeah, that guy probably has it all figured out. I don't know. I mean, and, so I don't know, what's something that jumps out to you?
Well, the thing that jumped out to me is that the Pharisee is kind of checking off some boxes. Like he's got some things, some to-dos listed out. Mm-hmm. And he's looking at his good works, which we are called to do good works. Mm-hmm. But if you're doing it from the perspective of to check off the box, then you've really fallen short already, because that's not what a relationship with God is about, to check off the boxes. Mm-hmm. And so, he's saying, I'm not like other people. I'm not an extortioner. I'm not an adulterer. I fast twice a week. I give tithes of my possessions. So he's saying, he's bringing all these things that he does to the forefront in prayer and saying, look at me, God. Aren't I better than most? And really, that's his attitude here, is like, I'm better than most. And at the beginning of the parable, you didn't read the verse, but in verse 9, it says, also he spoke, talking about Jesus, he spoke this parable to some who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and despised others. So the Pharisees were the church folk, right?
Yeah.
And they were looking at the others who they should be setting an example for and in service to. And just looking at them like they're not quite as good as the Pharisees were.
Yeah, there's no grace there. There's no extended grace. And one of the things that jumps out is Proverbs 16 and 18, where it talks about pride goes before destruction and a haughty spirit before stumbling.
Yeah.
That's the New American Standard, just if you're wondering. And in the King James, I think, says the same thing, but it says pride goes before a fall. And I don't remember exactly the terminology, but anyway, you get the point. The gist of it is that, and that's why I feel like sometimes that's where it goes, I guess, is because, like you said, you got a bunch of people that are saying, well, we do this, which if you look at Jesus as the, example that we look to, I mean, this was the Son of God. He could have easily pulled rank per se, or, and he was just the opposite. He was washing the disciples' feet, so it's a perspective to kind of, because there's different versions of this, meaning that, like, we can get caught up in our works, and not to say that they're not good accomplishments, right? They're good accomplishments, right? It's good things to do, right? But the other scripture that stood out to me was Proverbs 11 and 2, when it talks about when pride comes, then comes dishonor. But with the humble, there is wisdom.
Yeah.
It's like when you are all puffed up and you're better than everybody, like I said, there's no grace there. There's no like, hey, we love you, it's kind of shunning in a way, and I think sometimes the church is guilty of that. I mean, I do. I mean, I don't want to say that, but and everybody's experience is different. And, that's why we have to be careful. I know we talked last time about, our words and just statements and things. Like, there's a way that you can say something. There's a way, and meaning body language and everything, that you can say it in a loving way, or you can say it in not so loving of a way. But
Right. Well, especially in today's world, where I think as humans, we're just a little bit more prone to offense, especially when we're not walking closely with Jesus. It's easy to just get offended. And not to say that, fault necessarily lies on the other person every time that someone is offended. That's not what I'm saying. But yeah, all the more reason why we should make sure that we're, portraying a spirit of grace, kindness, compassion, understanding, being relatable to people that are in different situations than us. But at the same time, we need grace just the same as they do.
yeah, I mean, exactly. And there's one of the other things that brings it, and actually this is in Proverbs 14:12 and Proverbs 16:25, where it talks about there's a way that seems right to a person, but its end is the way of death. So meaning that, like you said, you gotta have grace both sides, right? You gotta have grace. Maybe that person just ain't having the greatest day, right? So I don't want to make it, one size fits all every time. There's circumstantial things that take place, whether right or wrong. Now if I was to go back and say, did he mean exactly that? What he's saying, I think that's what he's trying to pinpoint is like, hey, we get so puffed up and doing the right things, right? That really it gets down to the heart of the matter. What's the heart? Like, are you saying that because you want to elevate yourself above everybody else? Or are you saying that because, you genuinely feel like you're better than them? You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, I think that's what they were saying because that's what Luke is pointing out here.
Yeah.
And so my Bible, the notes, the study Bible, it references Revelation 3:17, which says, "Because you say, I am rich, have become wealthy, and have need of nothing, and do not know that you are wretched, miserable, poor, blind, and naked." Like, that's kind of like, when I think of myself to the Lord, I'm like, my perspective is, if Jesus never did another thing for me, he's already done more than enough.
Mm-hmm.
And if I do everything, all the good works in the world for the rest of my life perfectly, I'll still never do enough for Jesus, So that's my perspective. Like, there's no possible way that I could ever match what he's done for me.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so when you keep that frame of mind, like, and that humility, that, I mean, wretched, miserable, poor, blind, and naked, I know that's not how God sees me. I know that God sees me as a daughter of God. I know that God sees me as the apple of his eye, and he loves me and he calls me friend and all those things. That's not how God sees me. But my mentality is, without Jesus, I am nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's good. I mean, and you can't get so caught up in, it makes me think of 1 John 2:16 or whatever, where it talks about the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, and the pride of life. Sometimes the pride of life alone is kind of what he's talking about here, and even in Revelation, you think you're rich, you think you're wealthy. Well, honestly, some of the most, I feel like, followers of Christ that walk the line are some of the most humble people you could ever think of, because they're just like, man, they know that fact that I'm nothing without him,
You read some of those old schoolers like A.W. Tozer and Watchman Nee and hear what they have to say about themselves.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, like,
Pulverized.
yeah, God has pulverized my spirit because, or my flesh, because my flesh needed to die so that my spirit could live. I mean, they just know, like, this human body that they walk in is so compromised and so subject to things like pride. I mean, it just can swoop in, like, from anywhere, unannounced, at any given point in time. A.W. Tozer talks about, to think that we have any wisdom comparable to God's wisdom. Like, our greatest level of wisdom is like God's pinky finger. Like, there is no comparison to how great God is. Like, it's just, we're nothing compared to him,
Right.
And so when you think about that, kind of puts you in check a little bit, I think, when you start reading some of those old schoolers.
Well, and I think that's why that's something that we have to remind ourselves about, is that, I used to talk to guys who have, in all different situations, right? And there's some that, let's say, for instance, they'd been to prison, I would be honest with them, and I was like, man, and this is truth. It's like the only difference between me and you is you got caught.
Yeah. True.
I mean, literally, that is the only difference. So I don't take the stance of, well, now I'm with Jesus and
Right.
now I don't do any of that stuff and I'm clean. And then, so we have to be careful on how we position that, especially when we're trying to, welcome people into the kingdom. I'm sorry, but if somebody welcomed me in that way and
Yeah.
went through that whole things that he went, these guys are corrupt, they're crooked, they're evil, they're trash, basically, he was saying, and thieves and all this stuff. And really, if you look at it, he's probably right. More than likely he's right, but that's not the point.
No, it's not the point. If any man be in Christ, he is a new creation.
Exactly.
All things are passed away. That is our testimony that we have become new, but it's nothing of our own account. It is only Jesus, and that's the testimony that we reflect to everybody else.
Well, and even talks about in Revelations, everybody references that scripture a lot, but we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. Well, if you've already arrived, what's your testimony? Like what's your encounter that you've had, or what's that look like, I guess. And that's why I'm very careful and how I position. Now I do want to say this too, is that this is one thing I feel like, God, I got to be careful saying this. I feel like the church is weak in a sense, and I want to say this very correctly, is that the correct and loving accountability. There's a difference between calling somebody out and just to call them out in a group setting, or there's a difference between saying, hey, man, I'm really concerned. I mean, you doing okay? Like, I just noticed this is going on and I just want to,
Yeah,
is there anything you want to talk to me about or whatever? That's a different approach.
it is.
To, hey, brother, I know you said this, and why did you say this? This is not going against the word, and you start pointing at the word.
Well, the difference is calling people out and calling people up.
Exactly.
Because that's what iron sharpening iron is for, and holding people accountable, which I don't even know that it's at fault of the church, as it just is the human condition.
Exactly.
That we don't necessarily always want to confront, and we don't always necessarily want to be confronted on both sides. Like, that is just like the human condition. Like, we don't want to confront, we don't want to be confronted, unless you're like a really aggressive personality type. In that case, you probably need all kinds of help. But
well, right. No. And I feel like this is why, it's not one size fits all.
Yeah.
It's, before you talk to somebody, before you address somebody, before you witness to somebody, pray about it first, number one. Make sure the Holy Spirit's leading you in that direction. Because if you have, let's just use this as an example, if you have any reserve,
keep praying. Keep praying and don't move
exactly.
until God releases you.
Don't let your flesh and your pride get in the way and say, I just gotta say something.
Yeah.
And then you go say something and then it blows up and then you're throwing up all over everybody and everybody's mad and emotions get...
I'm so guilty of that. Well, I word vomit on a regular basis, no matter what the situation is. So...
Well, I mean, exactly. You have to... Especially in that situation, because I feel like, the tax collector, he was just like, man, there's also the pride of the fact of it's almost got to offend Jesus in a way, meaning that he's like, I got all this figured out, hey, I'm doing this, I'm tithing, I'm giving 10%. And there's people that think that way. I'm tithing. Man, I fast on a regular basis. And it's like, well, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Are you doing this to try to kill your flesh and grow, in the spirit aspect of things? Or are you doing so you can boast and tell people, yeah, I do this. I'm disciplined. I love the Lord and I do these things. And if you don't do these things, you're just not as good as I am, and like you said it earlier, the natural human instinct kicks in. I think you can watch through, look at the story of Joseph and his brothers, right? You got those types of things that happen, right? I think it's one of those things where they were like, "Pff, who do you think you are, dude?" Like, you know what I mean? And every circumstance is unique to its own, but we have to remember, like, I've been better. I didn't used to be good at this at all, not even a little bit. I'd be sergeant, you need to get your act together, and if you're not, you're subject to your own crap, basically, which
Oh, I remember.
it is. And so now it's just different. It's like, I get it. I'm like, you know what? Gosh, I don't want to act like I know how to walk in that person's shoes. I didn't grow up the way they grew up.
Yeah.
Not using that as an excuse, but that is a factor,
Yeah.
or, that's why I say you got to pray and ask the Holy Spirit. Because what if you confront this person and it reminds them of something traumatic that happened in their life way back in the day, and then it completely explodes, and so I guess where we're going with this is just kind of just making sure that we take a humility approach to even as far as the accountability, because there is love and accountability too. I don't want
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to make that.
Godly accountability is love.
It is, and you have to, keep those things in mind when you're looking, because again, I would want somebody to come at me. There's a difference when somebody says, "Hey man, you doing okay?" Like,
This isn't like you.
Yeah.
I just noticed this.
like
I'm
I'm
just checking
seeing
in.
I'm seeing some things here. I just concerned for you, man. Do you want me to pray with you? Is there something I can help with? I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever that looks like is an entirely different approach than come and say, "Well, brother, I noticed you posted this thing on Facebook, and what the heck's going on with your life? It looks like all hell's breaking loose in your life. Are you even saved anymore?" No, I'm not saying. I mean, I actually, believe it or not, I have seen, maybe not that exact, but something pretty close.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow.
Yeah. Or they'll just post it on Facebook.
Or yeah. Social media is, maybe that's,
Instead of calling up your friend and your brother or sister that you love and saying, "Can I pray with you?
Yeah.
Let me just put you on blast on Facebook or
exactly.
whatever social media. I'm old, so it's Facebook in my
Yeah.
arena.
Yeah, well, there's all kinds of stuff out there now, but I mean, yeah, and maybe that's something we need to discuss, as well, because this is the flip side of that, is that, gosh, I wasn't planning on doing this, but don't air all of your junk out on Facebook.
Not even junk. I mean, just some things are meant to be personal.
It's just personal, right? And just, get somebody to agree with you in prayer on that thing,
Yeah.
Don't air it out. And not only that, believe it or not, the person you're directing that to or whatever, they get it.
Yeah.
And if they don't get it, one of their friends did and say, "Hey, did you see so-and-so's post?"
It's not even necessarily just junk and bad things that you don't want to air out. I mean, some things are just not meant for the entire world
Yeah.
to know
Yeah.
about you. Keep some of those things to yourself and between you and the Lord, even. I mean, He likes having secrets with us.
He does. He does. And which also makes me think, even, and one of the scriptures I had written down here was, in Galatians, like that, I feel like Galatians 5:22 and 23, where it talks about the fruit of the Spirit, I feel like that's a good guide,
It's a really good guide.
and
It
don't
is like
don't manipulate
the
it
guide.
either. It's like, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such things there is no law. Right? So that's what we want to portray. So if it's in love, if it's in kindness, not because I want to put you on blast, but because I genuinely care about you and are you doing okay? You know, like that's one thing in, you know, some of the work positions I've been in has been leadership as well. And I used to have those conversations like, you know, this isn't the way we do things as far as this goes, but I would then push that aside and say, okay, now how are you doing? Forget
Yeah.
about work. Are you okay?
Yeah.
And I feel like they appreciated that, like, oh, okay, you genuinely care, like you really care. And that's the approach that I try to. I'm not saying I do it every time because believe me, I've had to repent for some things too, but I try to keep those things, bringing it all back around to, again, I try to think, man, I don't walk in their shoes every day, you
Yeah.
know. Um, you know, we've been across all, I feel like a lot of avenues, not all avenues, but a lot of avenues, you know, like the person that's struggling financially, we've been there,
Yep.
you know, the person that didn't know where their next meal was coming from, we've been there, right?
Person that struggled with addictions or
Yes.
alcohol or problems in your marriage or problems with
Yeah.
kids.
All of that stuff.
We've been there.
We've been there. And so, not saying we did it perfectly, but saying
No.
that we just stumbled through it, right?
Yeah.
And the one thing that kept us was Jesus.
Yeah.
I mean, that really was the only thing. And so we need to keep that into perspective, you know, keep putting that as the perspective because, you know, again, everything you have to kind of really weigh the thing out, you know, spiritually, like, Lord, what are you doing in this situation, you know, and what's my part,
Yeah.
you know?
Going back to the fruit of the Spirit, just even like that is a good guide and a good way to check your spirit. And like when you're approaching someone, something, and not even necessarily approaching someone, but approaching your own walk in the Lord. Like, am I doing or, being led or behaving in, am I operating from the Spirit? The spirit of the fruit of the Spirit that is listed there. If it's not those things, pause, take some time,
Yeah.
get with the Lord. If you need to, repent. You know what I mean? Like, get your spirit right. Take some time, take a time out, and just like get on your face, get on your knees, get in worship, put some music on, do some prayer, do some repenting, do whatever you got to do. And then, once you feel that peace come in your spirit because you've gotten with the Lord, you spent some time with Him. I mean, God, He wants us to know the way that He's leading us, right? Like,
100%.
He doesn't want us to be left to our own devices and our own fleshly ways. He wants to lead us. He wants to give us His Spirit to guide us. And so when we find ourselves, okay, now I'm moving in love, peace, patience, I'm moving in all these things, then you know that the Lord is with you. He's leading you in a new direction. And then you can go to a person or go through a situation and be like, okay, the Lord's with me. He's going to guide me through this. And He does. He does it every time.
Yeah, because that was something like if my heart ain't right,
Yeah.
you know that,
Yeah. And we don't have to move if the Lord's not in it. You know what I mean? Like, we can just stop and pause and just like be still,
because the enemy wants to provoke you,
Yeah.
and try to get you to bite on it, so to speak, and then
move in haste.
yeah, and then you do, and then it's like, man, why did I do that? I knew better than to do that. To where I think the older you get, just the more experience you get.
Patience really does set in.
It does, because I've failed miserably in all of that stuff, and it's like, and I just have to, now I try to reevaluate things to think, and I look at it differently, because before you were so provoked from emotions,
Yeah.
to where now you kind of think, well, I guess I get that. Or sometimes I don't get it. And I'm in today's day and age, I'm going to be honest, like,
Yeah.
I mean, some things to me, and this probably ain't going to sound like the love of Jesus, but I think people get too flaky, like, to where it's like, I'm sorry, like I said, there's a love in accountability. There's a love in hearing the hard things from the right person, from the right person in the right timing. There's a love in that, and it isn't all warm and fuzzy all the time. Sometimes it's like a knife being jabbed and then
Yeah.
twisted, it's like, oh,
Sometimes. Yeah.
and then sometimes it is warm and fuzzy. They're both good, right? But that's where we got to get like, I feel like in today's day and age, just because I don't agree with you, don't mean I don't love you.
Right.
Don't mean that we can't have a conversation. Doesn't mean, and this goes across political, moral, ethical, whatever,
Professional.
professional, all of that stuff. Like, it's okay to disagree. Is everybody hearing me right now? It is okay to disagree with somebody, not for the sake of lashing out and screaming and arguing and getting in. That's not Galatians 5. That's not it. Part of it now is that, and trust me, I hear some pretty unbelievable things in this day and age, but I mean, I just think about like, wow, and I try to process it. Like, I try to think about like, okay, you know what? I guess I try to understand it, but it's like I don't understand it, and I don't agree with it, and that's okay. But
Yeah.
I still love that person, and the thing I do is, Lord, encounter them. If it's a truth they need to know, let them see it, let them hear it, all that stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah, God's still answering prayers. But then if you go on and this kind of the second half of that and where it gets to the tax collector, and the tax collector standing afar off would not so much as raise his eyes to heaven, but beat his breast, saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other, for everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. And I think that's another thing that kind of comes with age, the patience and the humility, because as we get older and we have a few more gray hairs on our head, it's so funny because wisdom is upside down, I think. It's like the upside down kingdom thing. Like, wisdom is knowing that only God knows. You know what I mean? And we know very little. And so the more that we lean on God, his wisdom, his guidance, and not like being prideful or thinking that we know it all, I think the wiser we are. Like you said it just a minute ago. Sometimes I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
the older I get, the less I know, really, honestly. But yet somehow that translates to wisdom, this humility of, man, God, you're the most righteous, you're the most amazing, you're the most wise, you're the best, you're the greatest, you're the one true living God, and everything I might know is but a glimpse of what you know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, 100%. And it just goes like, and I use this a lot, but I just think it's so, the older you get, the more I can get to the 1 Corinthians 2:2, and it's Paul simply saying, for I determined to know nothing among you except Jesus Christ and him crucified.
Did you have that on your notes?
I didn't.
Oh, okay.
No. And I just, like, I feel like I get there a lot, and there's sometimes even as a leader, or even outside of that, just being a human, really there's lots of things that I do, and some things I walk away like, I have to trust the Lord 100%. And I feel like that's the part that you're challenged the most. and it says trust in the Lord with some of your heart. No, it says all of your heart. So meaning if I made a statement to the Lord and I said, Lord, if it's your will and your way, I'll look like a fool.
Mm-hmm.
Well, careful what you say, because he will hold you to that. And I've walked away from a lot of things, whether public speaking or not or whatever, to where it's like, what in the world was I saying? What was I thinking? But then it takes you to the part where, you know, his thoughts are not ours and ours are not his.
Yeah, trust in the Lord and lean not on
Your own
understanding.
Exactly. And that's the key, is that I thought it was foolish
Yeah,
what I said or whatever.
or did.
Most of the things, it's usually me saying something. And I'm like, why did I say that? But in the background, and sometimes you'll get a confirmation from it, and then sometimes you don't. Sometimes you just think, wow, I probably look like an idiot, But other times somebody will come up and say, man, that really spoke to my heart. I'm like, what? It did? Like, again, it's all in the perspective of the person and their situation that they're in. I look in a crowd and it's like the Lord would show me, like, I have, however many people's in the crowd, that many different perspectives on life, right? Everybody's is different, and so
the awesome thing about God is that he loves each of us so much that even if he's speaking to one of the people through you, whatever he's having you to say or do, like, he loves people that much. Like, he will have you to say something foolish if that what seems foolish to you or even to others, if that's going to be the one thing that gets to that one person that he's trying to reach that day.
100%. And that's a different type of commitment and devotion, especially because, like, for me, I come in the area of athletics to where, pride is like your regular everyday thing, and so it's been a long process, and so.
But moving, like, shifting, right, from like a prideful attitude about yourself to confidence. There's nothing wrong with being confident.
100%. Yeah,
and so
that's a good point.
That's a shift. God wants us to be confident in him again, and who we are in him, but not prideful. Not prideful to the point where, like the Pharisees, we look at other people and go, man, that dude's a joke. That girl's a mess. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And they sense it, they know it. So that, again, it's a heart issue. Is your heart right? And we want to edify people. We want to, like you said, call them up. Cause them to come in and then grow and discipleship. Discipleship is hard, and that's why, like, I mean, if I'm being truthful, like, a lot of your small groups and things they're so hard to get going.
yeah.
Because it's like, when you get in a room with people,
Start sharpening.
You have to get vulnerable. And sharpening that thing, there's friction, and we have to start coming to the table, bringing honest transparency and saying, hey, look, I struggle with this. Like, and I usually, I'll try to explain that. And when people are sharing things with me, like, dude, I struggle with anger sometimes, I don't want to say I struggle with it, but I have moments where I'm like, I get so mad, and then I have to sit back and go, Lord, I am so sorry. I don't know what is going on right now. There's a difference, as far as that goes, but that's how we sharpen, and maybe this person doesn't struggle with it, but maybe, he struggles with this, and it's like, oh man, I did. And this is what I did. So it's kind of like in the business world, in the corporate world, best practices, right? And And that's what we do. And at the end of the day, like I always find myself in this First Corinthians 2:2, man. I
Hmm.
always come back like, man, I don't know anything, you
Yeah.
know?
If this is all I know, if this is it,
Yeah.
if this is all I know for the rest of my life,
Yeah.
I'm in a pretty good place, I think.
Yeah. Exactly. And then you just look to him and say, and I don't want that to be a cop out. And I want to
No.
speak to somebody that is maybe watching here too, is that, I know I say a lot about getting in the presence of the Lord and spending time with the Lord. Each time that happens, there's sometimes I feel like, did anything happen? So it's not an emotional feeling, or it's not necessarily, again, it's not the fuzzy stuff, right? And that stuff's good, and he does that, because this is one thing the Lord was sharing with me. Because one day I was like, man, Lord, I set time aside in the morning, and I just feel like lately, I'm honest with the Lord. Like, I just talk to him like we're having a conversation right now. I'm like, Lord, I just feel like, man, like I'm just here, And he's like, I've never went anywhere.
Yeah.
Like, I never went anywhere. This is the thing, is that every experience is going to be unique to its own, because I don't want you to get so used to it that you don't still cherish and honor that moment, right? Or that particular encounter,
Yeah.
or whatever that is. Not saying he loves to encounter us. I mean, that's pretty evident, but there are times, man, when I feel like I'm like, man, Lord, are you even, what's going on? What's shaking today?
Yeah.
And immediately sometimes I'll go, did I make you angry or something? Like, what? And sometimes it's not even about that, and again, it's trust in the Lord, right?
Hmm. But it's another opportunity to look at him. My note in my study Bible, this is Dr. David Jeremiah. I don't necessarily know a lot about him, but he has a pretty good study Bible. Um, says the priority in Paul's ministry was to know Christ and him crucified, plus or minus nothing, a strategy that is still valid today. The great missionary to the Native Americans, David Brainerd, wrote in his diary at the end of his ministry, I never got away from Jesus and him crucified. I found that when my people were gripped by this great evangelical doctrine, I had no need to give them instructions about morality. One followed as sure as the inevitable fruit of the other. So just knowing Christ and him crucified is literally all we need to grip in order to pursue God in great fashion, with just the fruit of the Spirit as evidence that we're following him.
And Paul, this guy, man, if anybody had a reason to quit, it would have been him. But his persistence, and at the end of the day, when he says a statement like that, you're just like,
All I see is Christ crucified. That is all that drives me. That's all I know.
it's like, wow, this is pretty. I mean, the guy, I keep saying this because I always think of this and go back to this, but it's like, I'm just imagining, like, you're on a ship, da 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 da, we're going here. The ship crashes, or you're shipwrecked, right? In the freezing sea water. And if you need to know what that is, you can come to the Oregon coast. I can show you. It's cold. Anyway, and then he swims to the shore because he's freezing, goes to build a campfire, and gets bit by a snake, and he just kind of shakes the thing.
Imprisoned. How many times?
It's just, it's cool, but that's how valuable this thing is. This is not our home. This is
No.
a temporary place, right? And Yeah, the Lord is so good. And Paul being, one of the most lifted up philosophers, in a sense, he was a celebrity, really. And, had a lot of the Torah memorized. There's just a lot of things that Paul had going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, yeah, for the Pharisee and the tax collector alike, Christ crucified is the solution to knowing where you are in God's kingdom. Where's your heart?
Yeah, exactly. Where's your heart? That's the best way to put it, is where is your heart? Is it fixated on him? Or is it, look at me, I do this, and that, at the end of the day, those things don't mean anything if the heart's not calibrated and aligned up to him,
Sure don't.
So, good stuff. Good stuff.
Do you have anything else on your handy dandy iPad over there?
I don't. I kind of wanted some of these to be a little shorter, based on, because we were running an hour and 10, 15 minutes sometimes. And I get it. That's a long time, but I feel like just for these few, we'll see how long it lasts, till our next guest probably, but because I don't want to limit what the Lord's doing, in any of this. So, and I know there's plenty of people that could be watching plenty of other podcasts. So, but we do appreciate everybody who watches, and a lot of encouraging. We've gotten a lot of encouragement from this too. I know our friend Matt Davenport is very encouraging, and the Greens. There's just been a lot of people that's just been encouraging, like, hey, and because there's week to week, some weeks I'm like, Lord, there's a million people doing this probably way better than I am, but this is what he wants us doing, so we're going to continue to do that. So we thank you guys so much for joining us. We thank you for hanging with us, and the comments, keep them rolling. Any questions, feel free to send those our way too. But all you subscribers and the people that, if you haven't subscribed, feel free to subscribe. That's not what I'm doing this for. But, it does encourage every once in a while to see some people really, grabbing a hold of it. So we love you guys. God bless you, and we'll see you next time.